Okay, today what we're going to do is we're going to do squash, winter squash and corn. And the first thing we want to do is make sure our cutting board is stable, so we're going to put down a paper towel, wet it, and then lay your cutting board on top of it. That keeps your cutting board from sliding around. Next thing you want to do is you want to cut up your squash into smaller pieces. The first thing you want to do is cut off the ends, and then after you cut the ends off, you're going to go ahead and cut into some smaller chunks. And make sure the chunks have a little bit of size to them, because if you don't cut them in fairly decent sized pieces, you will have a harder time peeling the stuff out. I made the mistake one time of cooking this up, and I cut it in very small pieces, and it took me forever to clean the squash out of the husk or shell that's on the outside. And that's the thing about this winter squash, is I found out that this particular squash, this variety, you have to go ahead and just get rid of the outer layer, because the outer layer, the outer skin, by the time you get it cooked down enough to where it breaks down, the rest of the squash is absolute mush. So at least I found that out the hard way. The other thing that you don't want to do here is you want to make sure that you, when you're doing the squash itself, when you're selecting it, make sure that you do pieces of squash that were harvested about the same time, because like I say, with the winter squash, you can store it on the cabinet. These pieces were actually stored at room temperature. That's the beauty of this type of squash, is you can store it at room temperature and not worry a thing about what you're doing there. So anyway, we've got this, the pieces all chopped up. There is now a bowl full. The next thing what we need to do is we're going to go ahead and cook it up. You'll notice that I'm not adding any water at all. I'm just going to use the moisture that's in the squash. There's plenty of moisture in it. This also applies for a lot of other vegetables, by the way. So put the plastic wrap over the top, and the thing you want to make sure of is that you just get it across the top. It doesn't have to be a real tight fit. It doesn't have to be airtight. In fact, it's kind of preferable for it to leak the steam out a little bit to make things a little bit better. And then so we get it ready to go in the microwave. We pop it in, we cook it up, and I found that anywhere between 5 to 8 minutes seems to be almost perfect. The thing that you're going to want to do is halfway through the cooking, check it with a fork, see if it's tender, and make sure that you can actually peel it out real easily. Now, one thing you'll notice as I'm doing this here is you'll notice I'm just using a regular kitchen spoon, and then very carefully scooping out the squash out of the inside of the husk, or the shell, if you wish to call it that. I mean the outer skin. Now, the thing that you want to note here is that it's real obvious that I'm not holding it very tightly, mainly because I didn't let it cool very much. I was wanting to go ahead and get it done. I had some kids that were wanting to eat, and kids are kind of picky there. So anyway, we go through here, we get all the squash dug out. Once it's completely dug out, then you've got your nice fresh squash there to work with. You take a masher, mash it up, and get it to where it's broke up pretty good. Notice I'm leaving seeds and all in there. Seeds are good. They've got a lot of good nutrition in them. And then next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add, for seasoning, I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of butter. In this case, I can't believe it's not butter. I'm diabetic, and I use things that will work well with my diabetes, and this works well based upon South Beach protocols to try to help control the my insulin resistance. So anyway, I put in it some, I can't believe it's not butter, 3 tablespoons in this case. And then after you get it stirred in well, get it incorporated so that you know that it's mixed in well, because and that's the advantage of this already being hot, is that as I mix it, it's going to melt right in. Then what you're going to do is, the next thing you got to add in is your corn. Now this is just canned corn. This is unsalted, by the way, but it's been drained of its liquid. You don't need to add any more liquid to this. So anyway, mix this in, mix it real well. Make sure it's stirred in well. And because I have used unsalted corn, I'm going to have to add a little bit of salt in here. So I'm going to check it, make sure that it's seasoned, that I've got it seasoned to taste. And it's going to require a little more salt. In this case, I usually use my hand and cup it and get about a teaspoon of salt, but in this case it's going to take less than a teaspoon to get it corrected. So I start off with 1/8 of a teaspoon, stir it in, and always remember with salt and pepper and various spices, the one thing you want to keep in mind when you're seasoning your food is you can always add to, but you can't take it out. So remember that when you're seasoning your squash here. And it took me on this one about 3 tries to get it exactly right. I kept measuring a little bit into that little 1/8 teaspoon, and then I figured out about how much more it was going to take. And that's also why you want to check it as you go. That way you don't have to, because if you get it too salty, there's nothing you're going to be able to do to it unless you've got a bunch more squash to cook up to mix with it. So anyway, after I get it just right, now that was a perfect blend there. Now I'm going to add a little bit of freshly ground black pepper to season it up just right. And you can use the regular ground pepper that's in the can. That's okay. It just isn't quite as pungent or as strong a flavor. And I really like the fresh stuff. And so now one last taste here to see if the flavor's on target. And if it's dead on, then we're good to go. The only thing we've got to do now is to go ahead and I'm going to add a little bit of Oriental chili to the top of it, and to make it just right. So this was winter squash and corn. I'd like you to come to my website at KrabyMac blogspot.com and have a great day.